Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Simply ICS Cyber. I'm Don C. Weber, the cybersecurity guy.
And I'm Tom VanNorman, the ICS guy. And today we have Mark, and we are going to talk about some maritime stuff. Mark, explain to the audience who you are, if you could, please, and then we'll get into some really cool maritime stuff.
Hey, thanks, guys, for having me on. I really like the introduction theme. I was actually doing some dancing in the backstage. So, I'm Marc Ayala. Been in industry for 30 years, 20 of which been focused on control system cybersecurity. Early adopter of technology as an asset owner. Kind of went full circle from asset owner, vendor, consultant, back to asset owner, and kind of made that loop around. So. I've been focused around everything from specialty gases, chemicals, oil, gas, and maritime for some time now, and I've been fortunate enough to actually be connected with you two for some time now. So a little bit about me. Aside from that, is I'm also president of InfraGard Houston, which is the second largest chapter in the United States, which is a collaboration and partnership with the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And also a ISA, International Society of Automation Fellow, and instructor for the 62443 training syllabus and certificate classes. So, been around for some time, but really pleased to actually be first to be invited to Simply Cyber. So excited to be here.
We're glad to have you here, Mark. And like we said during the intro, Don's the IT guy, I'm the ICS guy. And, we asked you to come because you're the ultimate ICS guy. And we want to talk about some maritime stuff today.
Okay.
We've been hearing about maritime security for years now in the in the news, all the way back to when that large shipping company lost its Active Directory domain there and, caused havoc. But that was probably 7 years ago, 8, 9. I don't know. It's been a while, and we keep on hearing about some maritime stuff and theories and what can be done and how to attack it and things. What do you see in the maritime world? And you can talk about ship side, you can talk about port side, you can talk about whatever you want to.
Sure. Yeah, so one of my other volunteer, actually sworn in roles is to the Coast Guard for the Outer Continental Shelf, so Gulf of Mexico / America. And a lot of that includes drill ships. Obviously, there's cruise lines that are also travel and traverse through the area, and also offshore production platforms for gas and oil. And I will tell you that a lot of the systems, just like many of the chemical plants, refineries across the world, is that these systems are built to run for many years, decades on end before they're either revamped or mothballed. And in the case with ships, for example, a ship's lifetime can be anywhere from 20 years to even 40 or 50 years. There's still a lot of ships that are out there. So think legacy equipment now with buttoned on technology, kind of more of the state of the art, but still on old equipment. Think for us in the chemical plant world, think an old TDC 3000 Honeywell with some new Windows OS on top of that. So if you know. So there's a lot of that, and then the communications have also gotten much better. With VSAT and satellite, we went from 3 megabit uplink to now folks are bolting on Starlink, for example. So the LEO low Earth orbit satellite systems and getting gigabit, high megabit throughput for their systems offshore. And that's just another internet connection, broadband connection that these ships are getting, which is great, obviously, for crews that are away from family for long terms on end, traveling across the world, trying to get products to ports and terminals. So they're able to even use webcams. So the crew livelihood have generally been provided more opportunities to stay connected. But at the same time, a lot of the systems and traditional links that we have also have that throughput, and that risk is also carried through with even the shipboard systems. And we've seen, that poor remote access strategies, unverified trust on the other end of the keyboard. There's a lot of things that we see in the maritime space that that have been impacting for some time. And when you talked about Maersk, earlier in your introduction, that was a huge hallmark that transpired and hit the industry. And I guess the question is, have we learned any lessons? We're still pushing out new technology. We're still adopting and putting blind trust in applications and systems and servers and cloud and all these things. And yet, if you look at all the series of the typhoons, which are increasing, by the way, there's more than 3 typhoons now. There's like 5 or 6 typhoons listed. A lot of those are everything from communications to living off the land to supply chain. And we're just finding these things out within the last 2 years, but we're finding out they've actually been in the systems much longer. And that's all open source information. That's not classified. That's just some of the realities that are dealing with. And we're hopeful from the perspective that we've been able to eradicate them and evict them from the majority of these systems. But if you think about maritime as low-hanging fruit, kind of the later adopters of security, it's an attractive target. And so we have to be very mindful in securing these systems, educating the operators and the ship owners to doing the right thing with high dollar equipment that could be impacted. So it's one of these things I've been really focused on and supporting for some time. And a lot of it comes with awareness and helping drive culture, which if you've ever been on a vessel and went through ship change, it's very unique. It's a little bit different setting than a plant or refinery where you kind of know the shifts and you're out there, 7 on, 3 off, or whatever it may be. On ships, it's much longer duration, and and there's a lot of bits and pieces to it. Portable media as well. So
Mark, when I start thinking about this, it's obviously NotPetya. Really kind of, in my mind, helped us understand the critical infrastructure aspect to shipping and ports and so forth. With COVID happening, the supply chain has, for just about any product, has come into light. But when I think about these challenges, the NotPetya and the Maersk, it was one large company's issue. But at the same time, the ports did get hit. What the challenge around the ports part for me is, I live in Corpus Christi. I live in Corpus Christi. We've got they built a higher bridge so that we could bring larger ships in, whether they're cruise ships, but also some shipping as well. And the large companies, the large shipping companies are one thing, and I'm sure there's smaller ones as well. But I would think that every city is kind of on their own as far as a port goes, right?
Well,
is it kind of like water? Like every city kind of manages their own stuff, and so it's dependent on the local government?
Well, yes, but with a spin on it. So imagine you're a landlord of an apartment building, and so you own the land, so you're kind of responsible for that part of it, but you have all these other trading companies on your real estate that operate their own IT and even some of their own OT networks. So yes, with the spin on it is the fact that it's hard to really govern over those entities that are on your land as a landlord perspective. So, and that's what we're seeing is that you may have even refiners with gas terminals or loadout terminals within a city like Port of Corpus Christi, for example, where you don't own their risk, but you assume part of the risk if there is a loss of containment, fire, explosion, something of that nature, which could escalate. And if there was a cyber spin to it, that could all obviously hit the 10 o'clock news, which no one wants to be on the 10 o'clock news because that's reputation. But there's a lot of different pieces to it. So when you look at this, it's like, yes, we have this port authority and what have you, but you have a lot of these smaller entities that play a major part in the role. and you have to make sure that they have some type of cybersecurity discipline, both on the IT and on the OT side. A lot of these industries do not necessarily have regulatory requirements or regulatory burden, or at least from the perspective of a terminal, if it's an MTSA, a Maritime Transportation Security Act facility or terminal that is enforced. And there's other regulatory across the globe for your listeners as well, that if they are underneath that, there is a certain level of inspection that they must do. But I will say it's baseline. And as you know, in cybersecurity, the baseline stuff is great, but is it really moving the mark for industry? It's a great place to start, but I think the more mature clients and the more mature people that are out there doing the right thing are utilizing a lot of funding, making sure they have resources in a very resource constrained environment already, if you look globally. So those are some of the key aspects that I would say that are unique to port operations. The other thing too is it's really hard to deploy, standards for cybersecurity, the OT space on, for example, a layered approach or leveled approach that, from zones and conduits with an entity that might look at everything as IIoT or IoT, where it's just one chandelier of systems. And so that also, as Tom, you know, and Don, as you know, has its own set of risks and formalities.
Definitely a lot of moving parts there, Mark. The if things do not go right, it can go really south very quickly. If you pull in a vessel into a port with fresh fruit with food on it, you need to get that off. Within a day, I assume. It's got to be very quickly, because your strawberries, they go bad in a grocery store once you bring them home within a day. So you only have a finite time to unload that those perishables from that container ship. Also, being here on the East Coast, you go through the major port towns and you see all the vessels out floating the water to be unloaded. What happens when the vessel pulls up? How does the port know where to take these containers? Because I'm thinking that there's a manifest system and it gets attacked. What do you do with all these containers on that ship?
Well, back in the day, these things used to be on clipboards and on printed paper, which have all been digitized. So there's pre-planning, there's communications, knowing where the ship is located. So there's planning software. Obviously, I won't get into the names of the companies that make the software, but it's all software. So it's all software based, and the intermodal parts, those all interact, and they use gateways to be able to communicate with systems all around the world. So they know if the ship is coming from Singapore or from China or from wherever, they're able to track it and actually start making yard space and movement for that pre-planning aspect of it. And to your point earlier, there's refrigerated containers that, there's those reefers need to stay powered up, and there is a certain time length before they have to start bringing in and moving the equipment. So if you impact the staging software, the planning, and the intermodal aspects of this, of getting it on truck, getting it on rail, or you hit the physical security systems digitally and you impact the entrance of the facility, and you make it a really bad day for the physical security guards, that could also wreak havoc on how many trucks are getting in and getting out in a timely fashion. And as you know, that could be your main bottleneck. So there's a lot of moving parts, as you mentioned, Tom, that are key. But to answer your question, it's digital systems. A lot of these are all digital systems, and there's communications globally.
Yeah, we talked to Ginger Wright about some of the cyber informed engineering last season, and that's what comes to mind when you describe all of those complexities. What's really interesting is that one of the people that I spoke to here, I'm coming back around to Corpus Christi, he was a biologist, like it worked in agriculture, and he was an inspector here at the at the port. But now he got onto, because of the inspection, they brought him onto the drone team, and so it's a part of one of the bottlenecks are those systems that are actually used for inspections, the drones that are going through and counting things
Right.
as well. And every country is going to have this requirement for food coming in, criminal activity, actually personnel, people trafficking, and so forth. So that even the inspection side is another critical aspect of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually been manipulation in these digital systems for intent of bringing in materials such as drugs, people. And so in the Houston area and surrounding area, in our area of responsibility, we also have a cross-sector council that's focused on countering human trafficking as part of the InfraGard and FBI program. And I'll tell you, that's one of the key aspects. And the local sector here for Coast Guard is also, the authorized legal force, policing force for those interdictions. And I'll tell you, that's something that is baffling, but also scary to see, even in today's world, what people will go through and the means that they go through to do these things, horrible things. But yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to it. I love how Ginger has been able to move the cyber informed engineering piece and even stem it all the way through the maritime side. And I think there's much to be gained there. And we're also seeing a lot of this too on a global scale, where the classification bodies are looking at requirements for maritime around E26 and E27 that all new ship builds, must have cybersecurity built into it. And so those are engineering feats that are being done. And there's companies that are out there like ABS and DNV and many others that are able to go out and actually look at the systems, how they've been deployed, and determine, do they meet the muster? Do they have adequate security built into these systems, in these digital complex systems? So I think there's room for cyber informed engineering to be proven in these systems as well. One other thing I'd like to bring up, and it's one of these pieces that people tend to forget about, is not all port. If you've seen one port, you've seen one port, is the old saying. Not all ports are the same. You may have cranes; they look similar. They may be made by the same manufacturer. They could be overseas, or it could be, you have a facility or your waterway that is protected, and you have to have pilots that help these ships navigate in, and then from there you have tugboats. And these tugboats are also, a lot of them in the newer builds are digital platforms. They have wireless gateways, they have wireless, they have 4G, 5G, LTE, they also have VSAT, and they have digitized systems. So even their engine control and monitoring and all that is all remote access and supported. So without those tugs, or if there is a compromise or a breach or just unavailability of those systems, that could be maybe not a bad day, but that could impact operations trying to get boats in and out of the area and the port to do the offloading, but to also get them out of the way and get them out of the channel per se, so we can, keep commerce flowing. If you look at Galveston, for example, outside of the coast on that main entryway into the ship channel, it's like a parking lot. And if you've been to Singapore, you've also know what I'm talking about. It's like a lot of ships that are hanging out ready to be staged. And so if there's a major hiccup or pilots are unavailable or tugs are impacted, that could be another issue. But there's also ports that they're not really necessarily leaning on tugs. And you've probably seen some of these really wild videos where you see a ship come in, hit a crane, and there's no tugs around. So there's ports across the globe that, they really need to have their navigation, their dynamic, if there's dynamic positioning on board, if they're, navigating themselves, very important that these systems are not compromised or in a good steady state. And that's obviously an area of concern. So it's one of those things. I love the tug group, especially in the area down in Corpus. A lot of great tug operators in the U.S. and I'm sure around the world that we rely on to be able to get our commerce and our goods into into our countries and out of our countries.
Mark, when we first started talking, you talked about having Starlink for essentially creature comfort. What purpose does a broadband connection have on a ship, business wise? Are these systems calling back to shore for maintenance schedules, for navigation instructions, for why do they need the broadband connection outside of video chats?
Well, historically, they haven't really needed it. They've been able to operate with it for many years, but I think the need is to be able to have more data, more availability and access, so you're not paying somebody, $3,000, $4,000 a day rate to fly out, chopper into a vessel offshore. There's a lot of money involved. So having somebody, a trusted vendor, remote access in to look at your shipboard systems is a desire that many of these ship owning and operating companies see as a win. So with the ability to have that high throughput, it allows them that capability. Hang on one second. Sorry, I have so many applications. Something was ringing. So going back into the broadband capability, there's a lot of opportunity to be able to bring in systems, but also to output data. So for the longest time, we were trying to utilize VSAT to be able to kind of filter out or to compress a lot of data to send out. So think about syslogs, right, in your IT environment or your OT environment, and you're trying to pipe that out and get it to a security operations center or somewhere.
We do that?
Those logs, yeah. Well, so previously you would try to only do it on exception deviation and only be able to compress small amounts to send out and be able to string. And now with that higher throughput, you can get a lot more out of your logs without the need for doing that compression deviation and filtering. So that's kind of a win on the security side, is you're able to do more as well. And so I think that's kind of the bleeding edge, cutting edge stuff that it has the ability to help the maritime space. But buyer beware. Just because you have Starlink is not responsible for your security. Neither is AT&T. Neither is Verizon. So the buyer beware is you are still responsible to secure that vessel. You are still responsible to secure that port. Right?
It's in space. It's secure. It's in space.
Yeah.
There's nobody around, right?
Yeah. What it means, though, is that malware, virus, nation state adversaries can get onto that vessel much faster than a 3 megabit uplink, downlink from VSAT.
They'd give up because it's just too slow before.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of, and from the oil and gas perspective, this allows the remote operations centers the ability to see more, do more with rigs that are offshore. In production facilities that are offshore that they've struggled with. But we're fortunate in the Gulf here in the U.S. where we have a fiber optic ring that is in the ocean that has been providing high speed internet to many of the rigs that are out there in the OCS. So it's great that we had
like a microwave ring.
Well, so it started out that way, but eventually it essentially BP many years ago actually did some laying of fiber, and then they sold it off to a company. And so they've got stanchions that are out there that actually act as a 4G LTE. That way ships that are traversing and platforms that are traversing and workboats is another aspect of it that also utilize the technology and are digital, or have become much more digital in nature. And so it's
smart. That's people being smart.
Listen, when you're offshore and you're on a rig and you're looking at their radar and you're seeing cruise ships that are pretty close to your actual platform, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I hope that cruise ship goes that way and not this way, And so you're looking at this dial and spread, and you're thinking, well, is that 5 nautical miles? Is that 10 nautical miles? And then you start looking at all these vessels that are close by, and you think, from a bad adversary perspective, we've got to protect infrastructure, whether it's boats, vessels, platforms around the world.
Yeah.
So those,
we've been hitting on like supply chain and stuff like that. We're coming to a close, but I don't. So what are your thoughts around, like you mentioned it yourself, cruise ships? So obviously we know that protecting people is important, making sure that their creature comforts are there. But certainly, so what are your thoughts on cybersecurity, cruise ships, and stuff like that?
Yeah, those are floating cities. Those are floating cities, and I'll leave that to the cruise line experts, in which there are plenty. There's folks around the world. There's Royal Caribbean. There's Carnival. They have really some stellar teams that do a great job. But again, once you hit that service entrance, it's all determinant on how you actually separate your systems, segment your networks. And just like anything else, making sure you're doing the right thing with the equipment, and you have monitoring and detection in depth. But it's on a much bigger scale than, say, a drill ship, for example. You've got a lot more crew members and a lot more people that are out there wanting to get a connection. And as well, you have everything from ballast control to thrusters, dynamic positioning, all the things, engine control and generator sets that are important and to protect. And so those need to be truly isolated and managed. Obviously, that's a key piece. Right.
Yeah. From that standpoint, like doing an assessment, reviewing those, each one of those areas that you just talked about, that would probably be a different, a zone or process
conduit.
So each one of those. So the ship's not a whole. You don't do an assessment of the ship all at the same time. You do certain sections of that and see the interconnectivity and the exchange of data. Was that accurate?
That is accurate. I would say that some vessels, depending on their segmentation, could be utilizing the same hardware to enforce that segmentation across everything from VLANs for those zones and those conduits. So as we've seen historically within the last 10 years, if you can get into a network management switch or what have you, it's possible that you could circumvent a lot of the wheels that you have put in place for that segmentation. So not saying that's the case for the cruise industry, but so the zones and conduits are very important, and I think they do a good job of that. But I can tell you that they are very busy on a daily basis keeping those systems up to par, honestly.
Long pause. I was waiting for Tom to say something. Mark, what is we're coming up on the end. What did we forget? You kind of brought up something, but have we forgotten anything or any shout outs before you wanted to before we finish up?
No, just hey, thanks guys for having me on. It's great talking to you all. I've known you for some time, and I appreciate having a discussion around maritime cyber. I think it's something that we've, just like everything else, we've gotten better at. It's going to take some time, especially trying to migrate out of the legacy systems and do justice with the systems. But we have to really embrace and realize that a vast majority of our throughput in every country is done by sea, ports, terminals, and so we have to put a lot of attention and thoughtfulness in upgrades and system design to where we're not impacted if there's an outage, and building resiliency, and cyber is definitely a part of that resiliency plan. So those are some key pieces there and some takeaways. So thanks again, guys, for having me on, and hopefully you get some comments and questions fed back in. So maybe look forward to next time.
Tom, what are your final thoughts, man?
Talking to Mark about Maritime here, what was definitely a good use of our time. We hear a lot about it in the news. We hear a lot about it from people. And much like all new shiny things, we have a lot of new experts that pop up out of nowhere. But Mark here has been working with maritime systems in the field for decades. So I consider him one of the true experts. So it was great to get a half hour of his time to talk about maritime today.
Absolutely. My final thoughts are, human beings are awesome. We've come up with this hugely complex system to ship things around the world. Getting good things in a lot of places, things that are necessary, and also creature comforts. But at the same time, it is a complex system. Hope more and more people are looking at this and getting better at doing this. There's always going to be risk around this. Hopefully we don't see an impact like we did before. That's why we talk about this stuff. Once again, Marc, I really appreciate you taking the time and filling us in, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.